crazy, you know. But they do such a good job. Yeah, they do such a good job recording me that I don't want to do anything to annoy them. All right. Let's go back and revisit where we left off last time. And where we left off last time is we were working on a site, hypothetical site, that had two versions, had a full version and had a mobile version. And our strategy was to create it such that we would share as much stuff as possible. And by stuff, I mean we would have PHP include files to contain things that were common between each version of the site. Because even though they're separate versions, there's still likely to be a considerable amount of common ground. And if there isn't, there isn't. But at the very least, where there is some common ground, we want to take advantage to it. Knowing that, we can make it look differently depending on whether it's the full version or the mobile version, just by virtue of the fact that we can style it differently. So keep in mind, we're talking about the content and not the way it looks. We can really spruce up the content by putting background images and all that sort of thing. But the content, you know, is very likely to be constant. So our strategy was something like this. We were going to have our root folder, all right, which again in our case is probably something like this. All right, that's the folder that if you just type in the URL that you'll go to. So in our case, if we just type in localhost, that's where it's going to start looking for files. We have in that folder an index.php that is solely responsible for redirecting them to one of two places, either the full folder or the mobile folder, each of which has its own index.php. And we'll have, likewise, for all the pages that they share, there'll be copies of them in both. Now, there's likely to be more pages in the full because that's one of the reasons that we take the strategy, is if we want to have more stuff on the full than we think makes sense for a mobile version. Now, we are going to have a couple other folders here that are going to come into play. We're going to have an images folder, maybe. I don't know if we will in this case, but we could have an images folder. We're going to have a style folder, and we're going to have an include folder. And in this way, we can put some common files, all right, that both of these need. And therefore, to get the banner, the full web page and the mobile web page will go up and find the include file for the banner. So I think we were like maybe almost all, most of the way through or half the way through actually creating the two templates. Remember, we're going to create a home page that was going to serve as a template. Now, we're not going to go and necessarily implement the entire site, but we'll go in and we'll create enough content, I hope, to kind of give you a sense of the approach that we could take for this. All right. Keeping in mind that our challenge is showing how we are going to manage it so that we're not duplicating stuff. All right, duplication is is poison for a developer, because that means that anytime anything changes, you're going to have to go and redo it. Now, to be sure, this kind of approach, while not rocket science, all right, does take a little time to sit back and pre-plan. If you remember last time, I won't re-sketch them again, but last time I had wireframes sketched out. And I was able to focus and identify what the common areas were on the page, to know what include files I was going to have. And I thought about this directory structure a little bit. So it takes a little bit of pre-planning to do that, so there's a little bit of effort up front. But the idea is we're going to develop this in a very clever way, so that we're going to minimize the changes. I was reading a book today, just glancing through it during lab because I didn't feel like doing anything else. Just picked it off my shelf. I hadn't looked at it in a while. And it said something to the effect of, oftentimes the longer that you put off programming, the better your project is going to be. Now let me explain that to you. That doesn't mean wait until like the day it's due before you even start thinking about it. All right? That means it's better off to spend those first period of time that you're working on the project thinking about the project and designing it as opposed to actually coding it. The coding should come later. All right? And that if the more time that you spend planning it, thinking about it, and so on, you're likely to have a better outcome than if you just jump in and start coding. So let's go and look at what we had. Let me make sure that my server is running. So I'll go to the XAMPP control file, or control panel, and I will start Apache. I think that's the only one that we need. All right. I'll minimize this. Go into my browser, and I'll type in localhost, which is my URL. Once we finish developing this, we would put it out on some web server somewhere, and we would put it in the root directory, and we shouldn't have to change anything because all our references that we're doing is relative to are relative references. We don't have anything hard-coded like localhost / file name. So I go in and type localhost, and again, it will bring up this on here, which is about where we got. The full version, again, notice that we got redirected. Even though I just typed in localhost, that called my default page. My default page is one of the pages in the default folder. Index.php is often defined by an Apache web server as being a default page. That page was, again, the traffic cop that directed either to the full or to the mobile version. So even though we typed in localhost, we got sent to that. If we go and view this in the mobile emulator, you'll notice that similar thing will happen. If I go in here and type in localhost, I get redirected. No, I don't. If I type in localhost, I get redirected, but I am redirected to the mobile version of the site. So I can tell I'm at the mobile site because that says mobile site, and I don't have the extra navigation that I get on the full site. So if we're going to remember what we have left to do, we have done the banner, we've done the navigation. We need, if you remember right, there was a content area and a footer, and then on the full version there was a sort of a sidebar, an additional content area. So we sort of have two more things in common and one thing that's distinct to the full version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to create the text for the home page. Let's go and find our files. Here's our web server's root, which I got right, except I omitted one of the P's at the end. Again, in the root directory is index.php, which is the default page, right? When we type in localhost, it goes to the web server's root, and it looks for some specific pages. And we can configure that. By default, index.php is on a typical PHP installation included as one of the default pages. And again, all this does is have that chunk of code that we borrowed from Detect Mobile browsers that looks at the user agent determines if it's on a mobile device or not, and then either redirects to the mobile page or to the full page. All right, so that's all that does. Once it's sent there, well, we have two could be independent websites. All right, the difference is we know that we don't want them to be truly independent. We want them to share some content. That's why we create a common include file folder that we're going to put our shared content in. All right. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to create two more include files. A home include file that's not going to be on every page. All right? I'm not going to include the home include file on every page. I'm going to include it only on the two different home pages. So keep in mind that there's some things that we want included in all our pages. There's some things that we want included in all our full version pages. And there's some things that we want included on all our mobile pages. And we'll see an example of that in a bit. But anything that we want to share, we're going to want to put in that include file so that all the different pages can get to it. So I'm going to call that home, and I'm going to call this one footer. And I'll edit the home page, the home include file, to just be an article that would be common stuff that I would want on both the full and the mobile versions homepage. So maybe I have a paragraph that says the mobile software development program at LCC is new as of fall 2012. It contains courses dealing with Android development, iOS development, and website development. The assumption here is that this is code that we would want shared on both versions of the home page. So I'll go and save that. The footer, I'm just going to put, something like copyright LCCC. That should be enough for now. Then I'm going to put these include files in each of my two pages, the full and the mobile. Notice what this page is turning out to be. This page is turning out to be just a mess of include files. Now, it won't always necessarily be this way. All right? We might have some stuff that isn't shared between anything that's distinct to this page. In which case, we don't really need to create an include file for it. We could put it right in the page if it's not going to be shared with other pages. So, but in this case, so far anyhow, we have not found anything that is only in the mobile site's homepage. So therefore, so far, it's all include files. We'll do the same thing with the full version's homepage. We'll put in those two include files. But if you remember right, as part of the problem definition, we said that there was some additional content on the home page that was not, or there was going to be additional content on every page that was not on the mobile counterpart, and in fact is not shared among the other pages on the site. So I'll put an aside here. Oops. And maybe I would put something that it's okay to appear on the full site, but maybe if I want to keep the mobile version lean and mean, I wouldn't include. Like maybe I would include statistics about the growth of mobile software for the full version's homepage only. All right. So, if I go and look at it, there we have just a plain old HTML. This is the content first, all right? Mobile first. What's the process of mobile first? First thing we do is define our HTML, define our structure and the basic stuff in it, all right? Now that we're doing the catch of developing the two things, our focus, or part of our focus, is going to be on developing code that is reusable, so that we can mitigate the fact that there's two different sets of web pages. All right, but we're not worried about styling yet. The styling will come in later. All right. The last, let me go and test the mobile page, the mobile version of it. And if we were to look at this, the mobile version, oh, I did not want to do that. I just want to type in localhost. There we go. And there's a mobile version of it, which doesn't include the additional content like the full version did. So far the difference between the two is our full version contains some extra links and it contains some extra content. In this case, this paragraph. I didn't worry about putting that extra content in an include file because the assumption was that this isn't going to be shared anywhere, that this is just going to be on the full version's homepage. All right, not anywhere else. All right. Now, there's one more thing before we start worrying about styling this. And keep in mind that one thing that's good to do is to give users the opportunity to go to the full version if they want to. All right? Remember, the whole idea of creating a mobile version versus a full version is that you're going to limit the user on the mobile version to the stuff that you think they're most likely going to be interested in a mobile version. But you know what? You might be wrong. There might be something that's on the full version of the site that they want to have access to. That they have a big tablet that they can view it. Or they have really good eyesight, so they don't care it's on a tiny screen. Or whatever. They have a fast web connection, so they don't care that they're downloading the full version of the site. So one thing that's nice to do is to give users on the mobile site a link to the full version. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to add a include file that's going to have a link to the full version. Now, why is this an include file? It's going to be an include file because I'm going to want to do this on every mobile page. All right? Every mobile page I'm going to want to have a link to the full version of the site. So, what I'm going to do is I'll go And I'll call it link to full. And it will simply be that will say full version of site. Now, what's the URL that I'm going to link to? Well, if I'm down here in the mobile folder and I want to get to this page here, I can't go directly from the mobile folder to the full folder. I have to go from the mobile folder up to the root and then down to the full. So my href will be ... /full/ index.php. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and include that in the mobile version of the page. And I can include it wherever I want to. I probably will want to do it near the top of the page so that they can see, hey, you're on the mobile site. If I want to go to the full site, click that. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to put that include file actually right underneath the banner. Actually, I'm going to, just for giggles, I'm going to put it above the banner. We can always play around with that. It is doubtful that someone would want to go from the full to the mobile version of the site. I guess the only reason I could possibly see doing that is if you got to the full version of the site by mistake and you wanted to go back. So maybe you would have a link, but we're not going to implement it. You'd implement it the same way. All right. So now let's go and look at this in the mobile emulator. So we're there, full version of the site. If I click on this link, I then get taken to the full version of the site. I'm going to go and put that in the full version as well, because now I've noticed that I might be in a position to see the full version on a mobile device. So I need that line of code in there. This sets the initial viewpoint and so on. So now, I'm running my big old giant Amazon Kindle, all right, or let's find one of the other ones. Yeah, one of these tablets that's really wide. We'll run the Kindle. All right, and I go to localhost. Oh, interestingly enough, the Kindle did identify itself as the full version. It didn't identify itself as mobile. That's interesting. Let's try one of these. All right. Tablet also takes me to the full version. Interesting. In other words, that traffic cop doesn't realize that this is a mobile device. It thinks it's a full blown site, which kind of makes sense because those tablets have about as good screen resolution as a regular one. Let's find maybe a little bigger one. Let's try this. All right. Yeah, you see there we're on the mobile version of the site. But given that this is a relatively big phone, especially that it is in landscape, we might want to go to the full version of the site. All right. Now we're ready to start styling. All right. Now, there's a couple givens that we're going to have. All right. The one given is that I'm going to put that IE catch. All right. Remember that little code that I have, little hack for IE? I'm going to put that in both pages, just on the odd chance that someone stumbles onto them from IE. I'm also going to put the little Firefox code in both versions of the style sheet, just again in case someone opens up with an earlier version of Firefox. So I'll go and I'll do that. All right. The other assumption is that I may get to the wrong page. I may be redirected incorrectly. All right. It's possible that that code that I posted from that place, which again, notice how given this strategy, that code's only in one place. So if they come up with an updated version, I just have to go and change it in one place. That code could be wrong. And someone that is on a mobile device could get not redirected to the mobile page. So there's always a possibility that someone could be viewing the full page even though they're on a mobile browser. In addition, I built in functionality in there to link to that. All right. The opposite is probably less likely. Someone from a full site getting into the mobile. All right. Just based on the way that if statement is written. It's pretty unlikely that you're getting to that if you're on a mobile version. So let's go in and let's put in those dummy style sheets. By dummy style sheets, I mean the style sheets that fix the potential problems with IE and Firefox. Actually, I said style sheets. One of them is a style sheet. The other is a little JavaScript program. And where did I put those? I'm going to copy this in actually both my two pages. So I'll copy that in there. I will change that to, I'll go up and then down to I'll create a script CSS folder. That way I can share it between the two. Now I'll go in and create my scripts CSS folder. Again, I want a common place that I can put this stuff in, so I'll put my 2 little routines in there. So now both of those are in there. All right. Now, keep in mind the situation we have. We have a full version of this, and we have a mobile version. The mobile version, we want to look the same no matter who is accessing it. We want it to just be one straight, simple set of columns going down the line. All right? The full version, we want to be responsive. All right? Why do I want it to be responsive? Because I want it to look good if I'm viewing the full version on a full monitor. I also want the full version to look good if A, I mistakenly get sent to the full version, and I'm actually on a mobile device, just the script isn't smart enough to recognize it. And B, or B rather, if I'm on the mobile version and I say, hey, I want to go to the desktop version, all right, the full version. So this page I want to have one look if I'm truly on the full version, viewing it on a desktop monitor, another version that I kind of want to look more like the mobile. So how am I going to accomplish this? I'll accomplish this through the notion of progressive enhancement. I will create a base CSS file that will give me this look. All right? That will keep things very simple. Will keep things having a width of 100%. Keep the styling simple for it. The background color simple. All that kind of stuff. All right. And then I will have a full CSS that's attached to a media query that will only run if I'm truly on a full display. So in that way, I kind of get the best of both worlds. All right? If the reverse problem happens, and I happen to end up on the mobile version and I'm on a desktop browser, I'm going to get a full version that looks like a mobile page. That's not really tragic. It'll still work. Won't really be an issue with that. So I guess I'm not too worried about that scenario. Is everyone clear on the strategy I'm going to take? I'm going to use a progressive enhancement. I'm first going to develop a basic CSS file that I'm going to apply both to the full version and to the mobile version. And this will be the only CSS file for the mobile version. For the full version, all right, I'm going to add a second one that gets added on via a media query that says, hey, in addition, if it's bigger than a certain size monitor, then go and do your thing and make it look more like a full page. All right? Now, I'm not necessarily going to go and do everything that I could do with the CSS, but I'm going to play with it and do some things just to sort of give you a sense of the kind of things that you're capable, or that it is capable of. So, let me go in here, and I'm going to put that in my script CSS file. And I'll call it base CSS. So progressive enhancement, I'm starting with the low end, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to put just some very basic code here. I'll give a body, I'll give a background of, let's say, a very light gray. So pound, CC. And the color of the text I'll give a very dark gray. #333333. Header, I'll do a border 1px black solid with 95% padding 3 pixels. And nav, we'll do something similar. Display inline. All right, where are we? What else do we have? We have a footer, and we have a article, I believe. So we'll do this. Footer. Yeah.
Now when the include file brings the text in, the code in, does it bring in just the text, or does it bring in the HTML with it?
It'll bring everything in.
So the browser sees the HTML inside the include file.
Exactly. It's just like it's copying and pasting it in
So
there.
you would style, say there's a footer or a header or a footer in the include.
You could style that, exactly. In other words, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm styling the banner, or yeah, the banner, which is actually a header tag. I'm styling the header, even though there's no header in the body of the page. The header is in the include file. But keep in mind, the way the include file works is almost though the web server copies and pastes it in there. So it's in there, all right, even though you don't see it when you look at the code. All right, this should be good enough for a start. Let's go in and add it to both of the pages. So there it is on the mobile version. Now let's go and add it to the desktop version. Or the full version is probably better to say. All right, now let's make sure that this works. All right, there we go. There we go. There it is on the base version of this, as viewed in the browser. Now we're not going to leave it like this, right? Because the whole, this looks very linear like a mobile site would be. And therefore, we don't like the way that this looks in a full browser. But remember, if someone happened to get sent to the full by mistake and they were on a mobile device, this is what the page would look like, which is pretty good. All right. Likewise, if we go into our Opera emulator and go and emulate this guy, let's say, that's how it looks. Now we might want to do something about the size of the font because that's pretty big. So we could play around with that. Let's go and all right, there we go. All right, that's a little more reasonable. And again, we have these links. We don't have anything out there, but we have the links out. We have the links available. And again, the point of this isn't to make a perfect page. The point of this is to demonstrate the technique. And you could go and you could finish up that CSS and make it sparkle if you wanted to. All right. Now, what we're going to do is put in the styling for the full version. Now this code is not going to be in the mobile version at all, right? If they get to the mobile version by mistake, that's what they get. But we are going to put in a full style sheet so that if they are on a full featured browser, full size screen, and they access it, that they'll see it through there. What's going to be the primary difference? Well, again, there can be more stuff in this. So I guess it depends on how much time I want to spend on it, how different we make it. Minimally, I want to do this. Minimally, I want to make it so that the wireframe looks more like that than linear, right? So point of having a nice wide screen is that you can have things in columns, all right? Columns don't really work good on a mobile phone, all right? That's why you notice most websites are fairly linear, all right, in their look. So minimally, I'm going to try to do this. I could do something like put a background picture on this one, if I wanted. Something you probably wouldn't do on a web page, you know, a mobile web page, put a background image. I guess you could, but for the sake of argument, we'll say that we don't want to in this case. All right, so let's go and do that and create the base. Or, I'm sorry, not the base, create the full style sheet. So I'll go into this folder. I will copy it, paste it. At the very least, I'm going to change some colors around just so that we know that we're in a different world. So instead of making it this, I will make it a shade of green. All right. I'm going to put some floats here. Again, I'm using the adaptive techniques to not give anything based on an absolute pixel, other than maybe some padding, but I'm floating everything. And I'm going to give my widths based on percentages. So I think I had an article, and I think I had an aside. All right. So let's make the nav with a 25%, the article a width of 30%, and the aside a width of 25%, The footer will make a width of 95%, and I will clear both floats. All right. Let's see how this looks. All righty. Oh, I didn't put the style sheet code in there. All right. Not bad, not bad. At least I didn't write bad code. Now we're going to do this with a media query. Because remember, there's some people that are going to be visiting the full site that are not on a full-size display. They are instead on a mobile, and they either got sent there by mistake, or what? Or they chose, even though they're on a mobile device, they chose to see the full site. So I'm going to go and I'm going to put my second CSS file here that is going to point to the full version. And I'll set the min device width of, 800, let's say. All right. This is kind of what I wanted. The full is the secondary navigation isn't quite where I wanted it to be, and I want the both navigations I want to be stacked vertically instead of horizontally here. But it's getting closer to where I want it to be. So I'll go in, and again, we're still sort of working on the template here. So I'll go in and edit this, and I will include, I believe what's going to help me is if I do this. And wrap both of these guys in a nav section. And then I'm going to go in Style, change the CSS file, keep list style type. I'll make the display of the inline or the LI. I'll make it be black. Oh. Oh. Should be an end nav there. All right, there we go. We ain't quite there yet because those navs sort of overlap with each other. We could, I'm sure we could figure out a way to fix that though. All right. We'll leave it like that, though, and have confidence that if we wanted to, we could fix that. All right, which I do have. I don't feel like bothering with that today. All right. Now, let's run through the scenario all the way through, all the possible test cases. All right. Let me close out of everything. I go and I open the page from a desktop browser. I'm redirected to full, and I get both style sheets. All right. I go to the page via the emulator. I get the mobile version of it. Now, what should happen if I click the full version? What's the page going to look like? It's going to look something like this. I'm glad he didn't say it's going to look like that green thing. All right, it's not going to look like that green thing because that green style sheet has a media query associated with it. And that green style sheet, for lack of a better word, is only going to apply on a wider screen. So, if I go and click full version of the site, I'll get the full version's content, but I won't get the full version styling. So, let's knock on wood, click on that, and sure enough, absolutely right. I get the extra content, the extra navigation, whoops, the extra navigation section, the extra text here, and all that, but I get it with the mobile style sheet. This is exactly what we'd want to have happen. All right? So we've effectively covered all our bases. All right? And all you'd really need to do is dot the I's and cross the T's to make the full style sheet look a little better. All right? Because the folks, the users seem to be, at least based on our emulators, users seem to be redirected properly to the full and to the mobile. And we have an option to go from the mobile to the full, and when that's invoked, that takes you to the full content that you get, but because we've developed it in a responsive / adaptive way, using the notion of progressive enhancement, it still has the look of the mobile version. All right? So that's actually pretty slick to be able to do that. All right? That sort of covers all bases. All right? As a developer, you take your best guess about what people are going to want to do via the mobile site. Actually, best guess is probably a bit of an overstatement. All right? You should analyze the problem and come to some pretty good conclusions about what you expect mobile users to use. But there's always going to be the chance that there's some piece of functionality that you just need to get to, or a user needs to get to, that isn't available on the mobile version of the site by design. You've trimmed it out of there. All right? And therefore, it's nice to be able to give this kind of thing where they get the mobile look still, so it looks better on a mobile device, but the content is there from the full site, so they get the full functioning content. Questions about any of this? Now, let's make one of the other pages. All right? That should kind of be a piece of cake, right? Because we've created our template. So, what did I call one of the other pages? Let's look at it. I called one of the other pages CISS268. All right. So I'll go and I'll clone my template. CISS268. I'll clone this template. And unfortunately, I can't just clone the template, right, because I don't want to look exactly like the home page. Instead of this include home, I'm going to put an include CISS265. That way, I'll have some shared content between both versions of the CISS265 page. All right, which kind of is cool, kind of makes sense. All right. So I'll go here, and I'll save that. I'll put the same thing in the full version. Whoops. And then my additional content will be additional content specific to CISS265 page. All I have to do then is create my include file for CISS265. And I'm not going to go and put a lot of stuff in here in the interest of time. I'll just say that this will be common content about CISS265. All right. So now, view this in the browser. And go to the second page, go back to home. View this in a mobile device. Go the full version of the site. The mobile, we could go to CISS265, get that, go the full version of the site, and so on. Questions about this? We're not nearly taking advantage of the full capacity of PHP. PHP is a very, it has a lot more to offer than what we're seeing here, But you should at least be familiar with the things that we're doing. In essence, we're using PHP for two things here. All right? We're using PHP to do that redirect so that the main index page that's in the web server's root can point the user either to the full site or the mobile site. That's the one thing we're using it for. The second thing we're doing is we're using include files. And include files really makes our life easier because we can carve up this site into little chunks. And we can put those little chunks wherever we want them. All right? And we can sort of piece things together. And anything that we want to share, whether we're talking about sharing between every page, whether we're talking about sharing between all the mobile pages, all the desktop pages, or if we're talking about sharing between corresponding pages on each of the two versions of the site, we can put it in an include file, and in that way we can share it. Questions? One more thing I want to do today. All right? One more thing I want to do, and that is I want to show a different way that we could take advantage of PHP. All right? A different way to take advantage of PHP. Actually, you know what? We'll leave that. I don't want to. I'd rather not rush it and try to get it in over the last 5 or 10 minutes a class. But we'll kind of preview it to kind of get you thinking in that direction. PHP is a full-blown programming language, right? So we could put code in our include files to be smart enough to know whether you're on the mobile version of the site or the full version of the site. All right? And if you're on the mobile version of the site, show one thing. If you're on a full version of the site, show another thing. For example, the one thing that bothers me a little bit about this, all right, about the solution that I developed, and again, it's fairly straightforward, so I didn't mind developing it this way, but the one thing I don't like about it is if we look at the navigation, right now I have two include files and 2 unordered lists. I'd like that just to be one unordered list. All right? I'd like that to be just one unordered list, and if I was on the mobile device, that unordered list would show maybe 5 items, and if it was on the full version of the site, that unordered list would show 8 items or 10 or however many we have. All right? I can put code in there that's smart enough to know where I am. Am I on a full version of the site or am I on the mobile version of the site? And based on that, I can customize that include file. So now we're starting to get more into the full-blown usage of PHP. We're actually doing some programming instead of just including some include files. So that will be one of the things that we'll do next time. Really, in some respects, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I could make 2 include files. It's not a horrible solution. But I think we should at least look at the other option, and that other option being that I put some coding inside the include file to make it smart enough to know and do different things depending on full versus mobile. Just like there's some coding in Angel, for example. You guys don't have a grade assignment link on your page, right? And I do. Why? Because the server-side script that generated the page looked to see what our role was. Now, I've taken classes here since I've been a teacher, all right? So that script is smart enough not just to look at me and say, hey, he's a teacher, he can grade no matter what, but what the role is in a specific class. So the PHP has all this capability to go and customize web pages based on any number of different factors. What we're going to do is we're going to use that capability to, instead of having 2 include files for the navigation, we're going to keep it to 1 include file. And there's a lot of good reasons for doing that. And then by doing that, we'll just make that include file a little smarter so that we'll put some PHP code in there to not always show all the links, but sometimes show some of the links, sometimes show all the links. Questions about this? The other thing I want to do next week is get you with an account here on LC's server so that you can upload PHP stuff. I do that for a couple reasons. First of all, by doing that then, by putting it up on a web server, you can test it on actual mobile devices. All right? It would be, I can test this on localhost, all right, easily, through the emulator. But if I wanted to test this, what I just did here on an actual mobile device, I'd be hard pressed to do that, right? Because I need a real web address to go and type that in. All right, so by providing you a server account, you'll be able to do that. In addition, if you don't want to go through the hassle of installing PHP on your own machine, shouldn't be that big a deal, but for whatever reason, if you're not able to or you don't want to bother with it, this will give you the ability to run and test your PHP code without having to install it on your machine. All right. Questions? All right. That's all I had.